Hey everybody, I sure hope I'm live. I'm having some issues with YouTube right now. It's telling me that I have an excellent connection, but live streaming is not available. And yet it appears that I'm live. So I, I guess I'm live. Let me know in the chat if you can see me and hear me. Let's hope that things are working out. All right. Anyway. We are here today to discuss a very important topic that has to do with everything having to do with not just drawing and painting, but with design and photography. And this idea of working big to small. You hear this all the time from art teachers and from professionals who are giving advice to students or to aspiring artists. They say, you got to work big to small. What do they mean when they say that? Well, I'll just give you some examples in today's Illustration Masterclass, and that'll make it all make sense. It'll make it all click. Hopefully you can take some of these ideas and work them into your own artwork and just make it extra special and extra good. And hopefully it'll also save you time, which we all like, don't we? All right, so before I begin with this lovely illustration, or painting rather, by our good friend Edgar Degas, why don't I say hi to some folks in the chat and see who's here. What's up, Afroha? And Megan's here, and Stephen, and Diana, and Umacorn, and Sherry, and Jane, and Christine, and Celeste, and Stephen, and Cody. Lots of folks joining in. Jamila, what's up? Hey, everybody. Laura's here. And am I missing anyone? Well, I'll get to you. Promise. Fabio, how you doing? All right, thanks everybody for joining in. Now let's just jump right in, and I'm going to switch over to a brush that's not so crazy. Let's look at this piece by Degas here. Big to small, big to small. What's the big idea here with this picture? Well, I'm just going to knock back the opacity here for a moment, and let's look at these big shapes, okay? Let's look at the big shapes. Ba-bum. I'll set my layer mode to overlay here, and I'll just knock that in. What do you notice right off the bat about this? Well, this is leading our eye. This big fat shape is leading our eye right here to this figure, who is of course looking up at this figure, who is highlighted by this window pane here, right? We have an echo of that back here. But these big shapes are doing all the heavy lifting for the composition. And I'm going to carry this all the way back here because this shape is especially important. Look at that. Okay, so you can see what's happening here. And then if we get into the sort of big/medium shapes, what you're going to see is this group of people over here. They're all kind of one group, okay, that form a shape like that, okay? There's a shape right there. Let's set that to overlay as well, so you can see all these big shapes working together, playing nicely. Look at this. Boom, 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 bang, bang. Okay, so what are we doing here? What are we doing? We are looking at, we've talked about composition before. This is nothing new. But we're talking about it right now in terms of shapes and understanding how this picture is being composed and arranged by the artist, thinking about how to balance everything out with these larger shapes so that all of the details fall inside this larger organizational structure, this structure that he's given to the picture, so that when we first look at it, we can pick out what's happening very quickly. We can understand it. There is clarity to it. But not only that, I want to take you to a place where we're talking about the process of actually arriving at a composition like this without going crazy. Okay, how do you do that? So I'll show you. When Degas would first look at an idea for a painting like this and say, I want to do this painting with literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, possibly 11 figures in it and a cello, okay? At first it might be like, well, gosh, what do I do? How do I make this work? Well, when we look at these simple shapes I was just talking about, that's how he would figure it all out, okay? And so if I were to do a sketch, and I knew that this was my real estate that I was working with, okay, I had this nice long format, I would say, all right, I want to have one figure kind of sitting here, there's the head, and they're going to just kind of be right there, and that dress going to pop out. I'm going to have another figure here, okay, facing this direction, another one standing here. Okay, good. Now I got it. And then I'm just going to have like a group of people back here. So there's my nice arrangement here. Different amount of space between this group and that group, and this group and this person here, which is, you know, since this person's closest to us, is just as big a shape as this group back here. But then saying, okay, I'm going to kind of angle the room this way. And now when we look at it, we say, well, that's not so intimidating, is it? Right? Just a thumbnail to make sense of where things are going to be. This is this big to small idea in action. You say, figure out the big stuff, okay? Figure out the big stuff. Group here, group there, figure here, wall, floor. Okay, maybe got some windows back there. All right, and then that is step one. Now you've already gotten rid of that fear of staring at a blank page, knowing you have a big job ahead of you, and not knowing where to begin, because you have begun, and not only have you begun, but you've begun with really important information, which is how to arrange this picture in such a way that you'll be able to give the viewer a nice composition, but also give them places to look, okay? They're gonna move from here to here to here, and they're gonna move from left to right and from front to back, okay? So there's a nice arrangement there that makes sense, right, for their attention as they drift over to the background and then back to the foreground and so on. So a lot of work happens in maybe just 3 or 4 minutes of thumbnailing that gets you so far along in the process of making that art. So let's come back to the image and say, okay, great. Well, then now he knows this figure is sitting here, right? All he has to do now is do some figure studies, get the pose right, play with that. Observe what a cello looks like at that angle. Do a little sketch of that. Make sure the sizing is all making sense. Do the same for these figure studies. Now things start to click. This area, very complex. It's going to take some more work, but same kind of deal. Think about how many figures and think about the arrangement of the figures so that they're interesting to look at. The poses are all varied. And you'll notice there's not a lot of detail in these figures, is there? They are far simpler in their rendering than the figure in the extreme foreground. And that's important because it's making sure that we don't get hung up in there with an unnecessary amount of detail. Okay, so when you're working big to small rather than small to big, what you can do is you can make those decisions as you go along, saying, I think I'll just add a little bit more here, then you look at the entire picture. I think I'll add a little bit more there, then you look at the entire picture. It's this process of doing the illustration, doing the art in stages and looking at the entire picture all the way through. What this prevents you from doing is getting hung up on one little area of your art, working it up to a certain level of finish before doing the same with the other areas, and then only discovering later that you have added too much detail, you've rendered too much, or your contrast is off, your lights and your darks, your values need to be readjusted. When you develop the whole picture at once, as a whole, from the larger idea, okay, through to the medium stage where you're arranging medium-sized shapes and everything, and then looking at values as you go, okay, and then continuing to build it up all at the same time, okay, bouncing around different parts of the image, making sure things feel balanced, stepping back, looking at it, stepping back again, looking at it. That's how you avoid the problem of having to rework areas, the problem of having it feel unbalanced, and all these other things. So this is how it is a time saver, but also it's just a great trick for getting you from the starting point to the finish line in a very orderly way, in a very reliable, systematic way that artists have been using for centuries. Okay? I'll hide this for a moment. Here's another one. Now that we've already talked about this, I'm sure you can very easily pick out what's going on here, okay, and how this is working, and what the bigger and medium-sized shapes are. Okay, but the very, very big shapes, if you just squint and look at this illustration, just squint down and look at this painting, okay, it's going to be very easy to see how it's broken down with this one primary shape with the most contrast and the brightest white. Okay, right there, bam. Of course, I'm going to look there. And look at this big shape here that is containing all this information. Lots of small shapes and medium shapes are contained within, but there is a clear sort of separation between this big chunk right here and this big chunk right here, and it's then interrupted right here. Punch a hole in it with this person, okay? And the composition works. It's beautifully asymmetrical. And the contrast very quickly tells you where to go with your eyes. And to work something like this out, the thumbnail, you can imagine the thumbnail would have been nothing big, no big deal, right? Just say, I want my figure here, want some activity here, top left third of the illustration, top third and mostly left of the illustration of the painting. Up here, just some decorative loveliness, okay, providing contrast here, right? And then here, what do I do? Well, if it's getting too dull and getting too empty, there's a big space there, I don't know what to fill it with, just do a nice transition right here, this diagonal, okay? From these cooler green and brown tones and gray-brown tones, and then going to this really cool violet blue, right? And then into a little lighter creamy color right here. So that nice gradation, right? That interesting area of color is done in a direction, right? There is a direction to it, there is a shape to it, but it's subtle enough that it breaks up the monotony here, but in no way distracts us from where we need to be. Okie dokie. All right. Hey, let's look at this photo, pardon me, of these elephants. Okay, and I want to show you the other idea about working big to small and how you use this when you're working either from observation or from your imagination. Okay, now I'm a lefty, so I'm going to slide this over to the right, size it down a hair, zoom in so you all can see this. When I'm looking at something that I haven't drawn before, or even if I have drawn it before and I want to make sense of what I'm seeing, this principle of working big to small comes in so handy. It makes my life so easy because a lot of it just has to do with measuring. Okay, now if I want to start my drawing by measuring the distance between the tip of the trunk here, the baby elephant, I'll just put some marks down on the canvas so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, and that front leg, okay, that is definitely not the place to start. Or from this heel to that heel, okay, and try and nail that angle. That's not going to do me any favors because I have nothing to compare those to whatsoever, right? Instead, the way I would start any drawing like this and try and get it right is I would look and say, okay, this is my subject. I want to grab both of these elephants and I'm going to place them in some a drawing in some other kind of environment, okay? But I got to get the proportions of the elephants correct. So what I do is I'd look and say, okay, what is the general containment shape for this first, right? And I say, all right, so I've got a shape pretty much like this that I got to deal with, all right? Then I look at that shape and I just kind of bisect it, okay? And I look at that and I say, alrighty, so we are going to go from here. Okay, this is the bottom, and that's that bottom corner, that's the trunk. We're going up, and just under the top, okay, let me get that, the head is going to break, and then there. Okay, I'm getting up that way now. Then I'm just going to carry all the way across. I'm going to ignore all these little bumpy bits and these nice contours and stuff and just try and guess by looking at it. Okay, trunk, head, okay, and then from this leg back to the other. This is kind of the general size I'm dealing with here for that front elephant. Okay, maybe it's more like getting back to like that, da-da-da-da, so I can make adjustments here and try and get that to feel good. Tail, legs are back here. Okay, baby elephant. I look at where does the baby elephant come up to? Well, now that I've got sort of an idea of where that leg is, okay, just pop on over this way. I can say there's the back of that baby elephant's head. Trunk's gonna come down this way. Total baby elephant real estate in the drawing is about something like that. Okay, there's a head, there's a foot, and now I've got that baby elephant shape sort of contained right there. Okie dokie. Back leg. See, I'm looking for like this triangle shape right here, right? So I just go, okay, look at negative space too. Don't just look at the positive. Look at the negative space, see what you can do. So there's that baby elephant. I can come back over to the adult elephant now and I can say, all right, let's look. How much space do we need for the body? Okay, versus the head. I'm just kind of cutting it here and I'm thinking, okay, what's that shape, right? This is the whole big to small action. You see how this is working, right? Okay, so there's my elephant body. And that feels pretty good. Elephant head, come forward here, and then down for the trunk. Tusks are small details, but what the heck, I'll just throw them in for, just so I have a sort of a general idea where they need to be, right? Ear is kind of like this sort of a shape, down and over. Okay, leg is stepping into some brush there, so I don't want to let that throw me off because the other foot is back here and it's actually making contact at about the same level as that baby elephant foot. See that? That's called alignment. You align things with other parts of the drawing. I check my distance here across there and I say, all right, am I going to do okay with that? Right? Yeah, should be okay there. And remember, when you work like this, the pressure is off. You're not having to like nail everything right off the bat. What you can do is you can adjust as you go and you keep sort of looking from a distance. What I mean is I'm pulling my head back and looking at it. And when I'm working digitally, one of the great things too is I can just do this. I can just zoom out and say, how am I looking? Okay, cool. Seeing my proportions really clearly here, right? Can place that eye right there. Okay, so that's gonna be in line just there. Got that. That shape's starting to come out and make sense there. Okay, get that head a little narrower there and then push the angle of the ear down this way, up, over, down, and across. Okay, there's that shadow that's being cast. That's actually a helpful shape for me to look at. I can say, look at that shadow shape. What's it doing? It's helping me to see. Okay, helping me to see other stuff that's happening here. I can align this to this, right? Make sure that I'm getting that foot in the right place. There's that grass and everything else. Okay, get rid of some of that action. All right, now this is this process that I use every time to get myself in the right zone for accuracy, okay? And this is saving me so much time. Can you imagine if I started on some small detail, like I showed at the beginning, like the small elephant's, the baby elephant's head, or something like that, and just how crazy it would have been to try and make sense of all that complexity, right? I just wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to do it. And so there, look, it's already coming together. It's already coming together nicely. Okay, we come down here. This has a slight diagonal to it, the body, right? And then it levels off. Just starting to get some of those shapes more accurate. We're rounding this off, right? Right here. Give a little bit more space there. Got that other ear back there, right? I can really start to get a little bit more specific now. Specific details can start to emerge. But you notice I'm still working with a lot of straight lines, right? A lot of sort of choppy geometric stuff just to make sense of all this complexity. And try and just worry about general proportions. Again, looking at negative space where I can. This negative space shape right here, this is a handy one, okay? You can see how nicely that helps me to measure. Same with this space here, okay? I can look at that and say, yeah, that's pretty good, and bring this in just a hair. You bring them up, bring that foot up just a hair. Yeah. And that back leg, and we angle out this way, and we have that other leg behind it, comes down and across. Okay, and we are really close to where we need to be here. All right, and that is saving me time. So I start with a containment shape. Okay, I bisect it because it helps me to see what kind of falls in the middle as I look from here to here, right? I can say, is there anything there like a landmark? It's close to this leg, right? Where it starts, this hind leg. Another thing you can do, of course, is you bisect it the other way, right? And in this case, that's really helpful for me because I'm gonna see right here, that bottom corner of that ear, right? That bottom of that ear is gonna fall about halfway. I know the elephant, the baby elephant, has to fall lower than halfway. That's giving me some good information about scale, proportion, etc., right? Look at this negative shape right here. It's just so good. See this? Boom, boom, boom. Okay, can you all see that? Should I use a different color? See that triangle right there? I can check myself right here and be like, okay, how's that triangle looking right there? Looking good, okay? And that's how I can stay accurate. Now, what do? Well, you know, you can either reduce the opacity, or if I'm doing this with just pencil on paper, what I do is what I'm doing now, which is just erase, and not erase it entirely. No, never. I always just do what I call a ghost. So you leave a ghost on the page, you leave something there where you can see your work, you can see what you've done, you can see clearly the lines you want to keep, you can see the lines that are accurate, and then you are ready to go ahead and start paying attention more to the contours, okay, that are actually there, right? Now I can be accurate. There's that ear coming up. And see, by having this drawing in place underneath, I'm essentially just tracing over it, and I'm just being really deliberate with the line work and making it all much clearer, right? Can't draw what I can't see. I can't see that other foot. I know it's there in the grass, but I want to only draw what I see so I can stay accurate. I hope this is helpful for you. I hope this is something that if you haven't drawn like this before, this is the way to do it, folks. This is how you stay accurate. Now I could, in my mind, sort of picture what I think an elephant looks like, right? We all say, yeah, I think I can see that. I can see in my head what an elephant looks like. Then you go to draw it and you're like, wait a second. Just how big is the head compared to the body? And then, how does this work and that, etc. It's, just these kinds of things are kind of hard to remember unless you're drawing elephants every day. And I certainly am not. I like to use elephants as examples too because they really are kind of unusual animals. We all have this idea of what we think they look like because of cartoons and things like that. But, you know, in reality, our image of an elephant in our mind is probably off half the time. All right, you get the idea. So let me stop and see if we have any questions here. It's Babar. Ah, oui. Babar l'éléphant, Babar. Je n'ai pas plus l'auteur. C'était qui a écrit Babar? If you remember the name of the person who wrote Babar, tell me. I have a 1954, 55 Babar book on the shelf back there. Should know the answer to that. What's up? Let's see. Questions? Any questions here? You feel that space helps the impression of movement, gives the dancer somewhere to go. Ah, yeah, we're talking about the Degas. Yes. This makes me want to do more animal anatomy studies. Oh, sure. It's a great thing to do. Thanks, Christine. That's really kind of you. I haven't spoken French regularly since 1999. So or 98, gosh. So I'm a little out of practice, to say the least, but I really enjoyed doing that, and I hope to do it again soon. I did a live stream in French a couple weeks ago, which you can watch. We talked all about color stuff in Photoshop, like for painting, mixing colors and all that kind of stuff, and working with a good palette, whatnot. That was a good time. All right, so there's my little demo of how to work with measuring, working big to small. You saw how I started with the simplest possible shape that I could, really, which was a containment shape. And so let's just see now what does this mean for, you know, something different. Like, you know, I struggle all the time to draw cars. I'm not a huge car nut in terms of drawing. I think this is the most beautiful car ever made, the Jaguar XKE. But I don't know how to draw it. So, you know, I think to myself, gosh, I really don't like drawing cars. I don't like drawing mechanical things, whatever. I like to draw organic stuff, animals, plants, and people, etc. But, you know, my job requires me to do this all the time. I have to draw things I don't want to draw. So looking at something like this, though, there's no difference to the approach, right? I'm looking at basically what is obviously a very long horizontal shape, containment shape. And just trying to figure out, when I look at this, you know, big to small, right? There's basically the bottom three quarters. The bottom three quarters of this image are going to be the body of the car, and just this top quarter or so is where I would have to throw in the windshield and little seats and whatnot. Now, if I don't make that kind of observation and be really deliberate about trying to measure that and estimate that in this kind of way, right? Then the drawing that I get in the end, if I were to just start drawing and say, okay, I'm going to just wing it, would definitely be off. I would have a really hard time making that work. So, but if you look at this, if you start with that and then say, hey, I know that roughly this whole area, okay, is going to be the body of the car, okay? And then I say, what's halfway here? Ah, look at that. How convenient, right? That's about where the windshield goes. And I say, all right, so then the windshield's up here, right? Actually, it's about like that. And then all the rest of this action is just car body, okay? Then by simplifying it down like this, I've already gotten myself to a really good place to make this car look right, okay? And I can adjust as I go. I can look, I can make observations. You know, one of the secrets to drawing, by the way, anything, is to look more at the subject than at your drawing. So constantly be looking over This is important. Look for things like this. I'll show you a trick. See this line right here for the windshield? Okay, keep that line going. Just draw right through it. And what do you get? You get that. Okay, so I just have to throw that in there now. I know that's roughly about where it is. See how handy that is? I carry that over this way, slight angle to it, line it up with the other headlight. You know, stuff like that kind of a trick. People who draw a lot, they're doing that kind of stuff all the time. Okay, they just draw through what you see, draw center lines, you know, sort of wrap a center line around this. Okay, you know, all that kind of stuff. Look for simple shapes that you can draw, you know. That's what you want to do. Look how nice that line is. It just goes woo right over. Okay. So yeah, this is one of my least favorite things to draw on the planet is definitely vehicles. Just not a fan. Not into it. Don't like it. Not one bit. But it doesn't mean I can't draw it. You can draw anything. You just use the same method for everything. It's always the same. Same for everything. Right? There's an ellipse, right? And I just look and say, okay, how far up is it? Okay, it's about 1/4 of the way. So I'm looking here, 1 and 2 and 3. Okay, so that tells me I gotta get this body of the car up here up a little higher and a little smaller. Now, if I hadn't checked that, if I hadn't checked to see where that tire was, right, what would have happened? That would have been pretty bad news. This needs to come forward a little bit here, you know. Just keep moving stuff around. Get that ellipse a little better. Woo! There we go. Something like that. Okay, there's that tire. This is coming up here. It's wrapping back this way. Notice it doesn't follow the ellipse, right? It's a different shape altogether, so don't make the mistake of drawing it like it isn't. Just draw what you see. I come here, which is bigger? Well, obviously this tire is much bigger, right? And I can look and check myself on that and say, okay, this is, where is it lining up? Right there. I can look at this corner here. I can pull down and say, okay, just a little bit to the right of that is where I've got that other ellipse to deal with. Okay. And there we go. All right. Excellent. Okay, and then around we go this way, and around we go that way. It's a nice S curve. Zoop. Yeah, so look, it works for everything. It works for everything. This is the way to do it. All right, so let's say goodbye to that. And if I were to knock this back and draw on top of it, then I would be pleasantly surprised with the proportions here, being that I'm not a car guy. There's a group of people who meet here in town where I live. Well, they used to pre-COVID. I think they'll pick it up again, though. It's usually a spring and summer thing, where they all own Jaguar XKEs. And it's like, this is not an easy car to come by. It's also a very expensive car because there's not that many of them around in good shape. And it's like a dozen people here for some reason who own this car, which is crazy. And they get together and they just hang out at this public park near where we live, and they park their cars on the grass so people can come and admire them and everything. And man, they are such nice looking cars. Again, I'm not a car guy, but just this particular car is so beautiful. The lines of it, and yeah, if I could ever own just one cool car, it would be the Jaguar XKE for sure. So if anybody wants to just give me one because you got an extra one and you don't want it, send it on over, please. That'd be great. Okay, anyway, that's pretty close to what was observed there. It's a little wonky in some spots, but you know, I wouldn't be able to sort of guess at getting these shapes right. No, never. It would be so hard for me to get anything even remotely close to what it's supposed to look like here. So that's why we do that trick. That's why we do it that way, right? There's the original, okay. There's the drawing. Now I can look at the two of them and I can make some little changes here and there and so on. But you know, like this bump here is more pronounced. This is more sort of rounded and so on. So you refine as you go. I didn't even observe these yet. I hadn't added these big details here, but now that I've got so much of the bigger stuff in place, it's easy to put these other little bits into the drawing. See? That makes your life so much easier. Alrighty, so that's how we do it. Now, so these are two completely different subjects, elephants, cars. But what about working from your imagination? So let's take a look at that. Alrighty. All right, now let's take two examples, like a scene and then a bust of a person, okay? And you would think, well, they're both very different, Kyle, so I'm gonna have to take a different approach with both. Wrong. Do not. You do the same thing. We work big to small. We think about the simple stuff we can handle first, and we move towards more complex stuff later. All right. So for example, let's do this. Let's make a little scene here. And I'm gonna paint with this brush that there's a free brush I made for everybody. Go grab it. It's called the Builder brush. Here it is. The Builder brush. And this brush is just a lot of fun. It's very, very friendly brush. And if you go to my Gumroad page, gumroad.com/Kyle T. Webster, you can snag the Builder brush and you can enjoy it. And it's good for all kinds of stuff. You can use it for adding just a little bit of texture. You can use it for drawing if you make it really small. You can use it for painting. You can just do whatever you want with it. It's very versatile. It's versatile. Okay, so let's imagine that I'm going to do some kind of a scene. So let me think. So some kind of an outdoorsy thing, or it could be an indoorsy thing. I think I'll do an indoorsy thing. Why not? It doesn't matter. Let's say we're going to have maybe like there's a big column here, and maybe those columns are going back in space here. So we're going to have another one here. Okay. And then if I travel across the way, I'm thinking kind of like perspective here and all that. We have some here. And maybe this is like, this is how our ceiling is like coming up this way. Okay, so then I take this back and I say, okay, the other one is going to be here. And then there. Okay. So this is going to be like some big room or something. And then here, maybe I'm going to have like an arch where people are walking in. Maybe it's like a big ballroom or something. Okay. So then here, I'm going to have like a big chandelier, right? Some big fancy chandeliers hanging there, doing its thing, being all chandelier-y. And then across on the other side of the room, we have maybe the ceiling. We're going to have a wall here. And then there will be a sort of an arch that way, arch up that way. Okay. See how I'm working this out? I'm not thinking about like what the heck this looks like. I'm not worrying about the details of these columns. I'm just thinking, okay, I'm just trying to make an interesting looking picture, right? And then maybe like, maybe here there's this person who's entering the room who's really special. And that gives us a sense of scale. So that person's entering the room there, and you know, they're casting a shadow behind them. So we get a sense of, okay, so that's a hallway or something like that, right? Make that a little lighter. And then, let's see. You know, the chandelier is going to be bright, I guess. So that's bright there. It's got some details in it and stuff, but I don't know what those are just yet, so whatever. Beep, beep. Whatever, that's the light. Okay. Then I'm going to say, all right, so as we get over here, you know, it gets a little darker because that big main light is the big light we're all looking at, and that's sort of illuminating things. Okay, maybe these columns sort of stand out a little bit. Maybe they're brighter on this side where the light is. Okay. So now we can move up to some even lighter values here. I'm going to do that. So we have our figure here. Maybe it's like this fancy ball. She's got this big dress. Maybe this is like a sort of a Cinderella kind of thing. I don't know. Except there's just like nobody in here, but whatever. I haven't figured that stuff out yet. Doesn't matter. I'm just getting the basic stuff down here. And so then these are like casting shadows, you know? This one's just gonna split the whole picture right there. It's gonna be like breaking one of those rules of composition. Don't divide the picture. Don't divide the picture unless you can provide a passageway through it. Well, maybe I can. Maybe there is a something up here, some dark shape here. I don't know what it is. Okay, just stick it in there. We'll figure that out later. Okay. And maybe there's like a light coming across the column there. We don't know why yet. Whatever. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's go even darker under here. Okay, because that's where this other part of the room is, where things get a little darker. And just gonna soften that transition. Start with the dark shape here for the column, and then we lighten it up a little bit on this side. It's getting some light. And I don't know, maybe there's some like reflected light back here. Who knows? We haven't figured all this out yet. All right, so what am I doing? Why am I doing all these big shapes? Well, you remember that Degas piece, right? Just trying to work out this, right? I'm gonna zoom out for a minute. I'm gonna have a shape that goes like this. Okay, it's actually gotta be more like that. Okay, so this chunk right here, that's something, okay? Then I gotta have this other shape it intersects with, okay, right, which is this big chunk. I'm gonna interrupt that with this column. Okay, that's a big rectangle. All right, and I've got this figure here. That's sort of like our focal point, okay? I know that much, right? I haven't figured everything out yet, but I know that this is where I kind of want you to look, as this person. So then there's all this stuff I can do. So let's say I grab this gray here and I say, okay, we're gonna have a cluster of figures here. Like, oh look, who's that coming in? Who's that person? They don't belong here, right? All right, so there's one little group of people, and we can have them connect to the column right there. All right, so that is gonna take care of that business. And we can like move through them with a few little gaps. So maybe we separate them here. There's a little gap right there. There's another little group, and there's another person right there. Okay. So we're getting ourselves a little passage through here. Even if it's just a tiny one, that helps. Put another person right there, and then just get them a little closer to this other one. So that would be some kind of arrangement of figures or whatever. And they're looking across at her coming in. And here's where I'm gonna put some more light there. Right, so we get a contrast between the wall. There wouldn't be a dark line there, by the way. That's just me showing you that shape. I want to make sure that that's obvious what's going on, okay? Because then what I'm going to do is across the way as we come across here, I'm going to put a shadow for that column that's up against the wall there, or close to the wall rather. And then I would probably carry this value all the way across that edge. Let's bring this column down a little bit, separate the floor from the column. Right now they're in the same space, right? Don't want that. So you can see how this works. Maybe that's a step, you know? I don't know. Maybe that's a little step that you have to walk down to get into the room. Maybe that makes it more interesting. Earlier I said this should be this should be like more of an arch there, so that's more interesting. Okay. Maybe this wall is a little brighter here, where that separation occurs. Start to paint over these little lines I made to make sure that it's in perspective, right? We don't need those anymore. Alrighty, now, hopefully what you get out of this is you're starting to build an image where here's this person who's very important right here. Okay, so we put them a little bigger, thinking about how big this person is and what happens if I come this much closer to the drawing, right? So maybe this person is a big deal. Maybe it's the king or the prince. They've got a scepter, you know. You say, whoa, they look important. Who are they? Okay, and then maybe you start to see, now you start to do medium to small shapes. So you say, let's come over here and let's put some details over here. It's like some kind of a table or some other kind of structure there. You know, what's around the corner back there? I don't know. It's another like big window. It's a big window back there. Big tall window. Another one right there. Did I know there was going to be a window there when I started? No. See, it's coming together. It's starting to make sense. We're starting to get somewhere with this. And it all started with just some big shapes and me just trying to work out, generally speaking, like some structure for this thing, right? And you can see what winds up happening as we continue to mess with it, continue to play. Now you got your little chandelier lights up there, whatever. That could be kind of an area of interest. See what happens when I actually use that white? I haven't even gone to white yet. I'm just using values up until this point that were like maybe 30%, 20% white. You actually use actual white and you go, dang, that is bright, right? Okay, so don't want to fiddle with this too much because I did want to also show you how I would do the same thing with a bust of a character, right? So there it is. That's as far as we got there. One brush, just messing with it. Got a little cluster of figures over here. Okay, you got them all doing their thing. Got this guy, he's important. We don't know what he's all about, but you know, where he's placed, separated from others, and looking across directly at this person, we know that something's going on here. This is important, right? It's starting to tell a little story, and there you go. Okay. Any questions about that before I move on? Let's see. You make it look easy. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah. You're welcome. Go get that brush. Gumroad.com/Kyle T. Webster. Get it. Gumroad. Gum like chewing gum. Gumroad.com/Kyle T. Webster. Okay. Snag it. All right, let's hide that for a minute. We got 2 minutes here. I'm just gonna really quickly knock in a little piece here so you see what I mean. So let's say I'm gonna draw. So we're gonna draw this figure here. Okay, so I want to think about the shape of the silhouette, okay, for this person, right? So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go, all right, so this is silhouette of this person, okay, and then I'm going to go full on with just working out, okay, we've got some hair here. That's one shape, right? Try and keep that shape kind of interesting, kind of engaging. Ear. And then we come and we do this. We say, all right, and this is going to be the figure here. And that is where I'd start. Same process, right? Same process, same deal. Okay? Hope that makes sense. Check it out, right? You're doing the same thing, boom, boom, boom. And I'm figuring it out big to small. Okay, I know I'm out of time, gang. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next time. Ciao for now.